we are both Weinstein Fellows, and it's my pleasure to introduce Gabriela Asmar. Gabriela is one of the pioneers of mediation in Brazil. She has more than 20 years of experience in mediation. She has worked in the United States. After graduating from master's course in New York, she started her career as a mediator, and she has been working in Brazil in mediation mostly. And she also acts as an ombudsperson for one of the major corporations in Brazil, and also for the United Nations ombuds for funds and programs. I'm very happy to host online or digital host Gabriela here today, and the floor is yours. Thank you again for being part of this initiative.
It's my pleasure. So we have 26 people and only 3 with the camera besides me. So if you could open your cameras, I understand it's challenging at the end of the day for you. For me, it's the end of the morning. But I would love to see your faces, because negotiation and mediation is mostly about human contact, human sensibility. We have to see each other and look at each other in the eyes. It helps a lot. So one of the main challenges at these times that we are living online, most of our interactions are online, they are a bigger challenge for negotiators, exactly because we cannot see each other's faces while we're talking, and we can evaluate the effect of what we say in the other person. Because some things we can hide, other things we cannot hide. And what is most important in a negotiation is what is not said, but we can perceive if we pay attention to the other person. And today's class is all about paying attention to ourselves and to the other person before making a decision, before reacting simply by instinct. So we can be better than instincts, especially because I'll talk a little bit about neuroscience, and well, that is the next chapter. So I'll share my screen. Do I have the permission to share my screen? Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Can you see it? Yeah. Okay. Well, there's something else that should have come. Okay. So if you only remember one sentence of everything I say, please remember this sentence in blue. We don't understand ourselves fully except in relation to others. And the same is applicable on the other way. So we don't understand our counterpart fully except in the context, in relation to everything that is going on. And we are part of this context. So we have, if we want to be a master negotiator, if we want to succeed in our negotiations, we need to go through these stages, understanding ourselves first and the reactions we have to the other person, and then trying to pose on the other person any kind of judgment. We cannot start by the other, and which would be easier because it's normally harder to see ourselves in our limitations and our fears in a negotiation table. It's hard to see how fragile we are, but it's a paradox because we are more powerful, we have more strength, the more we know our fears and our fragility. So this is what I'm here to develop with you. So one mediation tool, I know it's a negotiation competition, but we bring tools from different kinds of knowledge. So one tool that is very useful, that comes from mediation, we use a lot in mediation, is what we call systemic view. Systemic view is basically understanding, having in mind that when we are together doing something, aiming at the same goal, it doesn't matter if we are on the same side or not. Even when we look to our counterpart, we are on the same boat. So we have to have in mind not only what happens inside the boat, but also the conditions of the sea, what is going on in the sky. If in that sea there are sharks or just small fishes, if we're close to the coast or far, and we can only have a better understanding beyond the obvious if we can compare what we see from close and what we see from far away. That's why humanity has developed into using satellite devices in order to sail in the sea. So why do we need to see so far? Because we need to plan. We need to be prepared, preferably before we leave the coast. When we leave the coast, we don't want to have too much weight that is useless, because of course that makes our boat slower. It makes us spend more fuel. But worse than that would be if we were in the middle of the sea, surprised by a condition that we didn't provide for. And at that moment, in the middle of the sea, it's not the time to come back to search for more resources. So we need to plan. And the systemic view is what helps us look to a map that is really useful. Because as these images remind us here, if we have too much information, it is equivalent to having no information, because it's just too much. Our brains do not process so much. So we may end up more confused than clear. On the other hand, if we have too little information, and especially if this information that we have is not exactly the information that we need, doesn't meet our needs, our concrete needs, and most of all, the needs that we cannot foresee, it won't be helpful either. So we need to have a good balance between far and close, between me and you, between having our attention focused on what is on the table and what is around the table. These are complementary views that are absolutely necessary and interdependent. If you remember only one word, the word is interdependency. In a negotiation, we are all the time interdependent. The pandemic helped the whole humanity understand more clearly what interdependency is. I don't wear a mask for myself. I wear a mask for everybody that is around. And it's not my decision to wear a mask or not, because it's not my decision if the other person is to live or not. If I'm putting the other person in risk, I don't have the right to choose just for myself, because of course, it's uncomfortable to wear a mask. So this is when humanity is getting closer to the understanding that we are all one. You can be in Azerbaijan and I can be in Brazil. We are all in the same boat. So taking this experience into account and bringing this to a negotiation table makes it very close to all of us, what I'm saying here. Okay. By the way, since this class is for you and not for me, because of course I know what is in there, I ask you to please interrupt me whenever you find useful. Even if you don't want to open your camera, that's okay. Of course, I would rather see your faces, but it's okay if I don't. But I need to listen to you, whatever doubt you have, whatever need you have. If I was not clear, if I said something that doesn't make sense to you, please let me know, because we only have 2 hours to make this bridge useful to your competition. I really want you to win. Okay, so please let me know if I was not clear in something, or if you want me to go deeper in something. It's for you. I don't mind if I don't go through all the slides. That's okay. Okay, what matters is what is really useful. So I'm bringing here a concept you probably studied before, the concept of conflict, but the way it is packed here, the same concept of conflict that you probably had in other kind of points of view, but this is a very systemic understanding of conflict. It comes from another, how can I say, package of knowledge called systemic constellations. These are starting all over the world right now, and I'm a very big fan of it, and I work a lot with it. So Bert Hellinger was the creator of this knowledge, and he used to say that any conflict that happens in a relationship was the best way the system found, the system meaning the whole sum of the parts, to adapt to an imbalance. So any system, any group of living beings, animals, plants, human beings, companies, countries, any group of living beings searches for balance. When something is out of balance, the system will bring alarms to show the parties that they need to search for something that is more sustainable. So no system is static in a perfect balance, but the imbalance needs to be bearable. So what normally happens in any group of people is the search for a sustainable imbalance that is dynamic and that changes over time. And these changes, these new imbalances, is what helps the system grow. For example, you probably know this brand. If you don't, let me know. Kodak. Kodak was a brand of cameras and the films that used to go inside the cameras. So Kodak, by their own researchers, was the inventor of digital cameras. But what did they do? They were winners in the system that was current at the time. They were big sellers of analogic cameras and the films in the development of the pictures. So they said, this will kill us. So they just put the project in a drawer and didn't go ahead with it. And then someone else invented and they disappeared. Because the system needs to regulate itself, not just to survive as is, but to grow. This is our need. This is a need of life, to grow. So if you don't look at the imbalance as something positive, and that's what we learn when we study negotiation and mediation and so on, if we don't look at it in order to grow, if we try to hide what the new times are telling us, we tend to die. That's what happened to Kodak. So when the system shows an imbalance, the best thing you can do is look at it, face it, and see what good can come from it. That's what Beth Hellinger said. And to make it easier to bring to our current lives, our daily lives, it is the same process as any symptom in our bodies. If you have a pain anywhere in your body, this is a symptom that your body is telling you that something is out of place. And the only thing you can do if you want to live is go to a doctor and search for treatment. Maybe it will go away by itself, maybe not. So the conflict is a disease in the relationship. When we're talking about negotiation, we're not necessarily talking about conflict. So I don't know if the case that you will face in the competition is about conflict or just a commercial negotiation where everybody wants the same. More likely than not, I've seen other competitions, many others, there's always a dark point where people need to compete. So where there is competition, there is conflict. Because conflict, of course, is I want it for myself, not for you. And there's not enough for both of us. That is the assumption. So the system will try to regulate itself so that when the result of the negotiation is not balanced, when the solution is not really a solution, it will bring another situation to try to show the parties that they need to review whatever they decided. Okay? So that's why I'm talking about conflict here. And the problem itself is an attempt to find a solution, but we may find a solution or we may make it worse, depending on the tools we have. That's why you're learning about negotiation, I suppose. So I would like you to make an exercise. I didn't ask it beforehand, so I'm sorry, that was my fault. Does everybody have 4 pieces of paper? Can be just any paper, can be just scratch paper, whatever. I just need you to have 4 pieces of paper and a pen. Okay, by the way, 5 pieces of paper. We'll use the 5th one for the questions. So I want you to think about a real conflict in your life, something that is real, that it's not a supposition, it's not hypothetical, it's real. It is current, so it's something you have not solved yet. It can be a fight with your sister, with your mother. It can be a problem with a grade that you had in school. It can be your neighbor that listens to music too loud, whatever. If you can relate a real conflict, it needs to be real because you need to really feel what matters, okay? So if you can think of something that is closer to the case that you will face in the competition, great. Otherwise, think about something of your personal life. So, and it needs to be concrete. It's not a supposition, okay? And it needs to be between adults. Don't involve children, just for ethical issues, okay? It can be 2 groups. So you can think about your team and another team that is competing to yours. You can think about the people in your building and the people in the next building. But it needs to be something important for you, okay? And once you think of this situation, you will answer the 8 questions here. Doesn't need to be a master course essay. It can be just something simple, just for your own recording, because afterwards you will compare with what we will develop. So what happened? A very, very short summary of the story, a brief description. What have you tried in order to resolve it already? The more you tried, the less, normally, people believe in a solution. How do you feel about it? I'm not talking about how you think about it, but how do you feel? How do you think the other person feels? Of course, it's an assumption. Is there any person or aspect that have been neglected in the case? In other words, should there be anybody else involved in the search for a solution, or is everybody involved already in? And remember that I asked you to think about a simple case, not you and 30 million people, you and another people, or your group and another group, just for the exercise didactic, okay? Who gains power to the conflict? While you're fighting with someone else, is there someone else, a third person, that is just getting bigger and bigger in the situation while you're fighting? Or who loses? Many times when a mother and a father are fighting over no matter what, the child loses. Many times when we are fighting with another team, the third team is preparing. So this is the comparison that I want you to make. And what is imbalanced between you and the other party? What is the resource that you're fighting for and one has more than the other? Okay. And last but not least, do you remember similar situations involving members of your system? Can be a colleague, can be a mother, a father, a grandmother, whatever, that have had the same situation? Is it a recurring situation? Something that you have been through before and always come back in a different address, in a different color, in a different taste, but the same pattern? This is very important, okay? Because you can bring knowledge from other circumstances that maybe you're not remembering right now. And maybe this time you can do it different. So that's why it's so important. So I'll give you, it's 29 now. I'll give you until 40, 11 minutes. No, I think it's too much. I'll give you 8 minutes to answer these questions, okay? No need for long answers. 2 more minutes, okay? But if you have finished, please let me know. Okay, should we? So the question now is, and now I will need you to speak. What can you see now after answering the questions that was not so clear before? I would love to see you, but you can talk without the camera too. Were the questions helpful for you to understand better, not just the situation itself, but what to do in order to solve the problem in that situation? No one wants to speak,
So maybe I can go on.
please.
Like I love negotiation field, so I tried it myself as well. I thought that it may be helpful for me. Okay, do I have to talk about the conflict and the questions, the answers, or
Only if you want, whatever you find important, whatever you perceived as a gain
like
compared to before?
yes, these questions help me to see like the conflict from both sides, like why we have this conflict in the first place. I took the conflict with my dad, like we have always one conflict about me going to Europe for a traineeship. So I took that one, but still not solved. So I'm working on that. I realized that from these questions, I like understand my father more now. Sometimes like I'm telling no, it doesn't have to be like this. I can change it, but now I understand him as well. But still, I think I am right as well. That's the problem. It's not helping to solve the problem, the conflict. So I don't know what to do actually.
But that means that the decision-making power is not only in your hands.
No, absolutely not.
That's why you cannot solve it alone.
Yes.
Yeah, but this is something useful it's something you know, but it's different when the coin just falls, when you realize with more clarity that, well, there is something I can do and there's something I cannot do.
Yes, exactly.
Many times what we gain from this kind of exercise is understanding that there are things, and I'm not talking about your case, but there are things that are just what it is, life as it is. And there's nothing we can do to really change it. Or in other circumstances, well, there is something I can do that I had not thought about.
Yes. I think I have to think about these options that maybe can help me in the future, because still the conflict is not solved yet. So yeah, I have to think about it.
And many times the solution is just accepting what it is.
Well, it's a little bit sad, especially about my future. So yes, I will try my best at least till the last second. Then I will accept that it is what it is.
Okay. We still have some exercises ahead, so maybe that will change.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
I would like to talk.
Please.
May I?
Yes.
I took an instance of a conflict between me and some casual acquaintance, not a close friend. We had a conflict because she asked me to do something and I did, but she thought I haven't done it. It was some misunderstanding. And I don't want to go into details about the conflict,
Okay.
but I want to mention that the first question is important, what the other party feels, because we have to understand the other party in order to solve the conflict and problems.
Exactly.
This is the main thing I understood from this exercise.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we'll go ahead. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Now comes the best part, in my opinion. That's when you use the 3 pieces of paper that I asked, and I asked for 5, you will understand that later on. I want you to please put these papers on the floor, just like they are here. So you have paper number 1, you have 1 blank paper in between. You don't need to write in between. It's just to understand that this in between is a place. It is important to realize that there needs to be a space for the relationship. When I mentioned that a disease in the relational body is what we call many times a conflict, there needs to be a vision, a concrete perception of where this quote body is. So it is the in between. And then the third paper, which I put here as number 2, and the exercise is, and again, you don't need to say anything out loud unless you want. I would love for some of you at least to comment on the experience, but you don't need to go into details, okay? Whatever you want. So on paper number 1, you will put your beautiful feet on there. And while you're there, you will perceive, you will connect as if you were looking at the other person, as if the other person is standing on paper number 2 looking at you. The other person or the other group involved in the same conflict, it needs to be the same situation that you just did the questions on, okay? Because we'll compare. So on paper number 1, you will look at the other person. And you will stay there for a few moments. I would say that 30 seconds will seem like an eternity. And then you will step to the side. You don't step on the in-between place, okay? Because this is a sacred place. It is something very valuable. So you don't step on it. You step to the side, you get out of your place, and then you move and you put yourself on paper number 2. And then on paper number 2, you will be at the place of the other person looking at you. So you will pretend that you are on paper number 1, and now you are in the skin, pretending, of the person that you call the other one, okay? And you will stay there for a few moments. When you're done perceiving, and there is no rational understanding here. I'm not giving you a crystal ball. I don't have one, unfortunately. So you're not guessing what the other person feels. You're not judging the other person, nor yourself. You're not judging yourself either. What I need you is just to feel in your body as if your body was an antenna. You're just registering what you feel. Many times you will feel in your place or in the other person's place. You will feel like, oh, there's too much weight on my shoulders. Or you feel like I want to laugh, or I don't care, or I want to sit down, or I want to turn to the other side, or it's very uncomfortable to be here, or I just love to look in your eyes, or doesn't matter. There's no right and wrong. There's just what you feel. And this is the next level that I want you to get in touch with. That's why the title of our talk here is going deeper, so that you don't get surprised at the negotiation table. This is a real exercise that I do a lot, and I only work with conflicts, criminal appointments, and complaints. So many times when I'm dealing with a difficult person, the most difficult counterparts that I have, I do this exercise in real life, and it helps a lot. So you don't need, once you try to rationalize, you lose the exercise. Okay? So second movement, you are on paper number 2, looking at you, feeling what the other person feels when she or he looks at you. And then there's a third movement, which is going back to paper number 1, going back to your place and looking again at the other person. And that's where the crossroads are. Once you're back to your place, looking at the other person, after having been literally in their shoes, what changes? The question that I want you to answer is, what changes after you have visited the other person's shoes? Okay? So I'll give you 5 minutes to do that. It should be enough, unless you need time to get the papers and so on. But so 6 minutes, okay? Okay, coming back. So, what changed?
May I?
Yeah.
When I was on the first step, I see the door of my room, and it's absolutely different picture of my room. And when I go to the second, not between, second, and I see my window. There was a cat, and he was looking at me, and it's another picture, and I think it's in my room, in my personality, and it's a place that I relate into. But I think if the second step was another person's and another person's picture, it will be really different and new ideas, new feelings, and it's really important, I think, to place yourself into others' feelings and thoughts. That what can they think, or what can they feel in that situation, and emphasize and empathy, sympathy. I think it's really interesting.
But when you were the first time in your place, looking at the door, the other person, and then you went to that other place and looked at what was you, but then you came back to your place and looked at the door again. So did you have in this movement any different perception from between the first time and the second time you were in your shoes? What that is the point. Did you get a different look after having been in the other place?
Yes, actually, I realized that my phone was on the doorbell. I
Mm-hmm.
said, but first time I didn't notice that. When I changed my place, I realized a little bit more. I think what we call it, some aspects that I didn't see before. I think it's what you meant.
But does it relate to the conflict situation that you had in mind?
Yes, it relates.
Mm-hmm. That's the
We
point.
can do it in real life and conflict.
Yeah. So the point is, and we are here preparing a group to be negotiators in a competition.
Yes.
Normally, when we go any competition of any kind, of any circumstance, or any ability, is tense. We normally go to the negotiation table thinking about what should I do or should I not? What will the other person do or not? How should I be prepared? What is the systemic view that I can have that can be useful for me? As I said in the beginning about going on a boat trip and you have to prepare before you leave the land. So this is all about preparing for a long journey in the sea. So the negotiation will happen under circumstances that you know very little. You get a fact sheet and you get some other information about who you are and what the other person does or not, and so on. So you get a lot of intellectual information, but no one will tell you what is the human being on the other side feeling and doing and preparing. And of course, this is not a crystal ball, so it's not you're not guessing. This is not about guessing. It's about being able to perceive this deeper understanding of the other person involved. That's why for didactic purposes here in our 2 hours together, I needed you to focus on something that you would have concrete in your life. So a concrete situation in your life that you can refer to so that you can realize, well, this is true, this is not true, this is something that, I mean, a fantasy in my mind. No, this is really true and was there, like you said about the door. It was there and I didn't notice it before. But you can only have this evaluation about the usefulness or not of the exercise when you're relating to something that is real in your life. That's why the exercise requires you to think about something concrete, okay? But when you go to the table at the competition day, when will it be, Rosalind? The competition?
It's April 24th and 25th.
Great. So I'll be there with you mentally. I'll be thinking about all of you and wishing you all the best of luck. But here and in all the classes that you're having, we're talking about much more than luck. We're talking about preparation. So you probably have a lot of information, but our little brain, we human beings still have a very small brain compared to what we use a very small part of our brain. I'll talk about it in a few seconds. But what can we do to enlarge our capabilities of being there with the right resources, with the right preparations, and not getting out of balance when the other person comes with an intention to surprise us? Of course, they will do it. This is part of the game. You will do it too. But when you know that you have the ability to perceive the other person involved in a deeper way, human being to human being, even in a conflict situation, you don't need to be afraid, because you will know if you are afraid, it is a certainty that the other party is afraid too. They can be better actors, maybe, so they can hide their fear. But if you are feeling it, you can count on that the other person is feeling it too. So that makes you less fearful and more prepared. And you can do this exercise beforehand, before going to the competition. Once you know the case, you may or not have time. I don't know with what time frame you work, if you only know the case at the moment, or if you know it beforehand to prepare, if you know who your competitor will be or not. So if you have time beforehand, you can do this exercise to prepare for the real competition. So you can think about a face, about a name on the other side. Otherwise, it will be just there at the table, but you can still do it. You can transport your mind to the perception of the other party's view. And what you said is very important. When when you are looking at the other person, you may think that, well, we are equal. We are both negotiation students, and we're both here, maybe our first time in a competition. So I'm afraid, she's afraid. That can be. But once you realize that this is not all, and what the blue one sees is a completely different image. This is what you just told us in details about your room. What I see is a door. What she sees is a window with a cat. So you can understand that in order for her, the white girl, to understand what you see, you will have to describe that what you see is in a rectangular shape made of wood with a white t-shirt hanging on the side or whatever, and it has a detail that is silver. Or So you will have more conditions to help her to understand what you mean. Because many times in a negotiation setting, the real problem is you're talking A and she's understanding B. And the more nervous she is, the worse it is for communication purposes. So you're talking A. She answers to B. There's no communication. And this is just the obvious rational need to really understand the different places that each one stands on. And then there is another layer of information, which is this more sensible information. So I would love to listen more of you if you could comment on the experience. Please.
Is this something about me? I just can't hear because of my internet. Can you?
No, they're not talking at all. I am only talking alone. So imagine if you were in my place. Transport yourself to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And imagine that I'm here for you. I'm not here for myself. So if I don't get your feedback, I have no idea if this is being useful for you or not. I don't have a crystal ball. So if I want to communicate with you, communication means two sides at least. So I'll only know if I communicated anything useful if you let me know, besides her that she just said. Well, okay. So I'll go on with my own rationale. If anybody wants to speak, don't be shy. I'm here for you. So I'll be very happy if you let me know that something happened and it was useful for your understanding. So coming back to the dolls, they always talk to me. So there's not just this geographical understanding of the room. This is important too. But if the other person is like that, is it different or not in terms of the whole communication? Or if they are like that on a table, in many negotiation tables, we are side by side with our co-negotiator. Or maybe this is the lawyer and this is the negotiator, the business person negotiating with decision-making power. I'll talk about the lawyers a little bit further. But it's a completely different relationship if they are standing like that, if they are standing like that. Many times when we are in a conflict, people are screaming at each other and being this close to each other. So what does it mean? Why do people scream at each other being so close? Do they have a listening problem? Or do they feel they're not being heard? Many times people scream not because they want to invade you or be violent, but because they don't feel heard. The less heard she feels, the more likely it is for her to speak higher and higher and higher. So this one, if she understands this relationship and understand that, well, if she is talking louder and louder, maybe she wants to show power over me. That is a possibility. But maybe I'm not giving her the information she needs to feel heard. So what can I do? Negotiation is always about what can I do to make communications better. Even when I want to bluff, I need to understand that for my bluffing to be successful, she needs to understand what I wanted her to understand. Because many times this one says things thinking that she will understand in one way, and she doesn't. So if she's not able to read the hidden messages of the other party, she will not be able to manipulate, even when it's not just goodwill between the parties. You need to pay attention to the other person, because she is your guide on whether you're going to the destination you want to go or not. There's no better guide than what the other person doesn't realize she is showing. The real value in a negotiation is not what is said, it is what is not said. If she's afraid, she will not tell you, I'm so afraid. If she is very, she thinks highly of herself and she thinks, well, I don't need to fear anything because I'm so much better. I prepared so much more. I had these teachers from the Weinstein Fellowship, not that Brazilian one, but the other ones. So I need to fear nothing. And she's really, you know, in a worse situation. She will be inflated. And what happens to who is inflated? It's very easy to fall. So on the same hand that you need to prepare to read the signals of the other party, you need to read yours as well. Because the stronger candidate is always the one who sees the other and also sees himself. And on one hand, we're never completely prepared. On the other hand, we're never completely unprepared. We're not better, we're not worse than anybody. And the more humble we are, the more we keep open to listening and learning and growing and managing the situation. This is very, very important, especially if it is your first experience. Of course, you will be nervous. It's normal. But by knowing that you are nervous and preparing for that, once you are there at the spot, you will be nervous, but much less. And probably much less than the other party. So I'll come back to this point in a few slides. Just a second, now I'm changing. Is it black for you? Because it's black for me. Do you see the slide? No.
It is. It was black, but on the side there were some white lines or something like that.
I'll try again. Again? Okay. So, talking about limitations, I bring Albert Einstein, so I'm not talking about just anybody. It's not Gabriela talking to you, it's Albert Einstein, probably one of the most brilliant minds we ever had on Earth. And he said, it's his sentence, what limits me is what I know. So this is what I was talking about, the white girl that is very inflated and thinks she's the best. The more we think we know enough, the less we are open to learn. And a negotiation is always about learning from the other side and dealing consciently about what comes. We will never know everything. Just knowing that you will never know everything enables you to be curious and to be continuously learning. So continuously adapting to what is really happening on the table. So on one hand, what limits me is what I know. If I think I know enough, I'm done. On the other hand, I need to learn to know something so that I can make good questions. If I know nothing, I'm so nervous that I'm completely blocked. So that doesn't help either. We always need to find our own balance. And exercising this perception of ourselves and the other person is absolutely key for us to never lose balance, to be prepared to whatever comes. Because at least we know that we can ask the next good question. The next good question is always the best step now. And a winning negotiator is the one who asked the better questions and took the better conclusions about what really came from the other side. We will never be completely, we cannot just memorize a strategy. A strategy needs to be learned, of course, but we will never memorize it and have it perfectly developed in the real scenario. So we learn just to have a reference. But between the reference and the real thing, there will be surprises. This is the only thing that we will not be surprised about. That changes will happen on the table. And you will not get to ask Rosalind at that moment. He will be there cheering for you. I'll be here in Brazil cheering for you. But you won't be able to consult with anybody else at the spot. It will be happening live. So these are the tools that you really need to have with yourself, with nobody else. And it will not be on the paper. If you try to search through the papers during the negotiation, you'll be more lost than ever. Maybe you have a note here or so, but it will never be complete. And so I bring this definition of conflict, it's another definition of conflict from a different point of view that will bring us to the next subject. And this is more Americanized. The first one was from a German. This one is very American. So conflict is the perception. That's why the exercise is about perception of the impossibility of coexistence. So if I believe, doesn't matter if that is completely true or not, but if I believe through the lenses that I have to see the world, that it's either me or he, consciously or not, I will behave in a way to exclude him, not me. And why is that? This is not something that we can manipulate. This is neuroscience. So this is why it's important to have, I'm not a specialist, of course, but at least a little bit for negotiation and mediation purposes, I know. So our brain is very complex, of course. It is the most complex brain among all the animals that we know about, that science has known about. But it has basically three big parts. And it's called triune brain because there are three parts, but they don't exist apart from each other. So it is a unity that we can, for didactic purposes, understand under three different patterns. So the most ancient part is what they call the reptilian brain. It's about here. And it has this name, reptilian, because it was developed with the reptiles. It has about 40 million years on Earth, this kind of brain functioning. Of course, it is simple, it is rustic, it is straight to the point, it is binary. Binary means it's either or. So either you fight or you flee. Either you live or you die. There's no third option. only two options. Very, very simple, straight to the point. We still have this brain functioning because when we are in a difficult situation, there's no time for a very elaborated thinking pattern. The elaborated, the sophisticated rationale is in the neocortex. The neocortex is the whole top of the brain, but we normally talk mostly about the frontal part of it. Here is where human beings have developed further than other animals. Here's where we go beyond. Here's where we consume a lot of energy. So for this part of the brain to function, we need a lot more sugar. It is a good information for who is in a diet. So thinking a lot makes you lose weight because it consumes a lot of sugar and a lot of blood. So there's a lot going on here. All the synapses are happening in a very fast and complex way so that we can connect a lot of information at the same time. And between this very sophisticated part and the reptilian brain, there is the limbic brain. The limbic brain is literally a bridge between complex and simple. And it is exactly there that we not only process, but we produce emotions. So emotion is literally the bridge between very simple and what is our best option. And what happens in a situation of conflict or fear of any kind, and especially in a competition, because of course in a competition you're all the time, not just once in a while, you're all the time at the imminence of being excluded. So by definition, being in a competition means being in conflict, because there will only be place for one at the best place. There will only be one team that is the winner. So you're competing, you're in conflict, full stop. And what happens in this triune brain is that once you perceive yourself at the risk of being excluded, you go to the definition of conflict and you see that there's no place for two, there's only place for one. So the limbic brain tells the whole system that you are in danger. And the information of danger makes the neocortex close down. It's a lockdown of the neocortex because you need that sugar, you need that blood in other parts of your body. So the sugar and the blood goes to your edges, to your hands and legs. It was very useful when we needed to run away from bigger and faster animals in the forest. But in a negotiation table, we won't be able to run away. So all this blood and this sugar in our legs and hands will not be very useful. And in terms of the brain, we will be, in terms of processing information, we will be reduced to our reptilian brain. And our reptilian brain is not our best. It tells you to run or flee or fight, live or die, win or lose. There's only two options. And of course, only one matters for you, which is winning, living, and just staying alive, staying in the competition and going to the first place. But the other one, the other side of the table, will have the same phenomenon happening. So it's not a privilege. And you lose your ability to really understand what is going on and making the best of it if you let your neocortex close down. So you have to manage emotions if you want to be a winner. So I'll tell you a little story just to illustrate the situation. Two friends were camping in a in the woods. And they didn't know that there were dangerous animals there. So imagine they were in Brazil, in the Brazilian forest, and they, in the middle of the night, they were in the tent, and they heard, let's say, not a tiger. There's no tiger in Brazil, but let's pretend it was a tiger. So they heard a tiger in the middle of the night. They heard that, wow. So one of the friends opened the tent and started running in the middle of the night, in the middle of the forest. And when he looked back, he saw that his friend had the flashlight on and was tidying his tennis shoes. So he asked the friend, "Are you crazy? Do you think you're gonna run faster than the tiger?" And the friend replied, "I don't need to run faster than the tiger. I only need to run faster than you." Who lives and who dies? That's the question. Who stayed in the neocortex and who went to the reptilian too fast? So our main concern about emotions, we will have emotions, that is a certainty, and they will be high, that is another certainty. In a competition, they will not be a peaceful emotion. It will not be just joy and friendship. We will be in fear. So the chances that we will go to the reptilian and either become too shy or too violent, and the judges who will be in their neocortex because they have no fear of being excluded, they will judge your ability to manage not just the emotions, but the decisions that come after the emotions. So it is very, very important to train beforehand and be able to remain in your neocortex and not be, you will be surprised, but taking surprises into account makes it less fearful. So you will be more apt to deal with it. And that's what will show your ability to go further and to run faster than the friend, not so friendly. So I know we're not talking about mediation, but I just wanted to give you a little evolutionary pattern of negotiation. Negotiation was always the basic methodology to solve problems. So before there was a state above our head, and there were just human beings living in caves, and they had to solve their problems. Of course, they were negotiating. Many times, the stronger person would win for obvious reasons, because that was, how can I say, an invitation to agree with his opinion. There was irresistible, especially in the reptilian brain. But there were just two people trying to find a solution. So this is called negotiation. After that, humankind developed into having someone bigger than us to decide what is right and wrong. This is what we call the judiciary nowadays. And then from the negotiation, how can I say, methodology, not methodology, but the negotiation phenomenon, the negotiation interaction kind of interaction, to the kind of interaction that we have in the judiciary, it is too far away. Negotiation is the least intrusion. There's no intruder, there's no third party in that relationship. So there's good and bad in everything. It is great that we are not just able, but conscious that we are able to solve our problems. Are we? Many times we're not so able. And many times we are so reptilians, we're so involved with our own fear that we're not able to dialogue anymore. We're just doing two monologues at the same time. So it's a completely crazy thing. So we don't get anywhere further because I say A and you listen to B and you reply to B and I keep saying A. So we are not communicating. Okay. That is when we need a third party intervention. So between the two extremes, because in the judiciary, when you go to the judiciary, there will be someone that you didn't choose to decide who is right and wrong and impose this decision upon everybody involved. And he will do that, he or she will do that with a very small part of reality, which is the choice of the choice of the choice of information that went from you to your lawyer, from your lawyer to the paper, from the paper to the judge's assistants, to the from there to the knowledge of the judge, from the and then so on backwards. Okay, so it is a small cut of reality that gets really into the decision-making process. So the distance between that and the real problem in life that it is supposed to resolve is very big. Arbitration, and I put here like very broad names. I didn't want to call it arbitration because it happens many times in life under different circumstances. For example, a teacher and two students. For example, a mother and two children, or a friend between two other friends. So let's call this a binding decision from someone that you chose. And in terms of law, we would call it arbitration. But you chose someone to decide for you and for the other party. So this person, although it was a chosen party, so you can have a little more confidence in the person, but still it is someone who will decide upon their own judgment. He will listen a little bit from the two sides, but it will be his lenses that will select what goes into the decision, into the solution or not. And then we started having other methodologies where the third party intervenes, not just to not to tell what is right and wrong, but to help the parties decide better. And the most disruptive methodology that we know of in the world so far is called mediation. That's why it's very useful to look at the mediation toolbox, the toolbox. So I normally say that if you only have a hammer, anything you look at will look like a nail. So you need to have more tools so that you can adapt to the different situations. And the toolbox that mediation brought to the conscient mind of humanity is very, very useful because you can use these tools into a negotiation setting as well. The first book to be a reference to mediators is a negotiation book. You probably know Getting to Yes. So Getting to Yes is about negotiation. And what the mediator does is basically accelerating the behavior of the parties from adversarial into collaborative. Because I want to go here, because afterwards I'll go back. Because there's a huge change in behavior when you understand why collaboration is useful. It's not that you always be collaborating. It's not about being goody-goody, being naive. You want to win. This is clear and this is correct. But how do you want to win? Makes a big difference. So if you are on an adversarial logic, the way of thinking, the way you rationalize, the way you bring information into your mind, process this information, and responds with an answer can be completely different. If you have someone outside of the relationship, like the judge or the arbitrator or the mother or the teacher or the judges in your competition, if you have them decide who will win and who will lose, you need to think in a completely separate path in relation to the other party. So you need to propose solutions that are the best for you, and you couldn't care less if the other party is able to agree with that or not. It's not about agreement. It's about convincing someone who is outside the relationship. So you get apart from the other side. This is the same behavior that I mentioned when I talked about exclusion. The red arrows, they show exclusion behavior. On the other hand, when you're in a collaborative pattern of thinking, you need to propose something that it's good for you, of course, but the other party can accept. So it's 180 degrees different. You need to look at the other party and think, what can he or she accept? And then we come back to that pattern of exercise. The exercise that we did at the beginning is exactly for that. What can he or she see? What can he or she feel? What can he or she realize mentally as well that will help him accept what I am proposing? And of course, what I am proposing is good for me, of course. So if we find a solution in the zone of possible agreement, which is the intersection of the two groups of possibilities, what is in the first round space is what is good for X, and of course, the other one is what is good for Y. So if we have a solution in the intersection, we can all win. Best of the worlds. Not necessarily we are enemies. We can find solutions that will be good for me and for the other. So I need to transform either into and. This is what normally, Rosalind, please correct me if I'm wrong, but in most negotiation competitions, this is what judges are asking for. They want to see your ability to coexist. Sorry. So changing this, that's why it's important to at least understand the functioning of the brain. Because when we are under too much stress, we will reptilianly behave in an adversarial logic. And we want to be able to function in a collaborative logic, because this is how we are being evaluated. The most intelligent negotiator doesn't want to destroy the other side, but wants to win and help the other person think that they won as well, because this will bring up a sustainable solution, not a solution that is temporary, and the first opportunity the other party has, they will turn back the table. So it's not to be good, it's just to be effective. I wanted just to come here first. So humanity is developing in terms of the understanding of the possibilities of a negotiation or a problem-solving methodologies in general. I like to say in the broad sense, problem-solving, because we use it on an individual level, on a mutual level, or on a very complex situation with multi-parties. And I like to make this these analogies, that the bidimensional rationale is always either or. It's very reptilian. So at a certain point of human history, entertainment history, Charlie Chaplin was la crème de la crème. He was the best possible entertainment people could have. So people used to use their best clothes every Sunday, not only to go for religious services, but also to go to the movies, watch a black and white movie. And there was no sound, there was no special effects, anything. It was just black and white. And music normally to match the situation. And then the movie industry developed little by little, bringing colors, bringing sounds, bringing special effects, and so on, little by little. I don't know if you watched the movie called The Artist, a great movie. It's Hollywood movie. It's really interesting. It's about an actor that was very famous when the movies were silent, and when the movies industry started to add sounds to the movies, so the actors needed to speak, he refused to speak. So he went from being George Clooney to being a nobody. So he completely lost space because he refused to speak until he learned another ability to bridge the gap and be able to find a job again. So, and that brings us to Avatar. So why Avatar? There were 3D movies before Avatar, many, but none was big enough to have a global scale. And Avatar was the first one that was released all over the planet on a 3D possibility. And what happened was that Avatar just raised the bar. It raised the expectation of the public for entertainment. So these action movies after Avatar never came without a 3D option again. Because if you don't offer what people are expecting, you don't get public, so you don't get paid. So you fail. And that's exactly what happened in comparing to conflict resolution methodologies, problem-solving methodologies. This is exactly what happened to mediation. So Charlie Chaplin is compared to the law, bidimensional, win or lose, as Avatar is compared to mediation, because mediation was the first methodology to have the people involved aware of other elements in the decision-making equation. So you're not only thinking about money, it's not only about money, it's not only about rights, it's not about only about who's right and wrong, it's about satisfaction, it is about many times feelings, it is about emotions, it is about the limbic brain. It takes into account the limbic brain. It takes into account perception that is not materializable. So many times it makes a whole difference in a negotiation when you bring to the table the need of the parties to be seen, recognized, listened to, respected, and so on. So this new dimension that is intangible makes a huge difference in winning or losing. And many times it's not even perceived if we don't have this kind of awareness. And then now we still have another level, which is Bert Hellinger that I mentioned before, another level of understanding about human interaction, and that includes perception, deeper perception methodologies, and it goes beyond consciousness. That's why, maybe you didn't tell me, but I hope that at least some of you did the exercise that I proposed with the papers. And maybe you realized when you went to the other person's feet, you realized perceptions about you that you had never imagined the other person would have. And maybe when you came back to your own place and looked again to the other person, you realize the huge difference in what you see when you look at the same thing, because you're seeing beyond. Going beyond requires being open to all that is happening, and that many times is not concrete. Most times are not concrete. Carl Jung, a very famous psychoanalyst, he used to say that our consciousness is about the size of a cork floating in the ocean of unconsciousness. So the cork is the size of our intellectual ability to manage reality. And there is the whole ocean waiting to be touched, waiting to be acknowledged. And we won't be able, with our little brain, to do that all at the same time. That's why we need to be guided by this feeling, this irrational perception of the other person that touches us. And what we feel in our body is a big antenna. What we feel in our body is information, is important information. There are these people that just by looking at them, you feel like, ugh, because it reminds you of something that you don't even know what it is. But every time you see that person, you feel the same. And there's also the opposite. Some people that just by looking at them, you just feel relaxed, safe. You feel you are in a good place. So these are hints about what is going on in between you and the other person. It's not in them and it's not in you. It's not, a relationship is made of two at least. That's why the in-between is so important. What goes on in the in-between is what really touches white and touches blue. Especially if there is a table in between. The table is a clear guidance about the in-between. So what happens here is not absolute. Nobody is absolute in the world. If you are a son or a daughter, it's because you have a mother and a father. If you are a mother or a father, it's because you have a child. If you are a friend, it's because there's someone else there to be called a friend. If you are an enemy, the same thing. So it's always about how the in-between is placed, and what touches us is the in-between. So it's a completely different scenario if they are like that, like that, like that, like that. And I'm talking about energy. I'm talking about, it's not just what we see with the eyes. It's about the whole situation that tells you much more than the words can tell. And again, that's why it's important to prepare for a negotiation with the whole image of what is going on, of the in-between. I've been here. So when we do that exercise, we have this fear, this danger. when the great difference between the questions that you answered and the physical exercise, just standing there and looking at the other place, the big difference is that mentally you are always functioning with what was already there. You're not able to be surprised. You're in the court. So that's what happens to this friendly, how do you say that? Rhino. Okay. So our little friendly rhino here, if she thinks about what the other person can see, she will think always about her own horn in the middle. She cannot, because she's a little, so she cannot picture the world without her own horn. It's impossible for her. She has never seen the world without it. So it will always have a horn. So how can she understand the crocodile? How can she explain what she sees to the elephant? Because the elephant has the horns on a different place. How can she explain? Another very interesting exercise that I love doing when we have more time is to have someone tell everybody else about what he's seeing and the other people are not seeing. And the other people having to draw according to what this one person explains. So this one person explains what is important for her in her court, in her vision of the world through the horn. So what she thinks is obvious, like the horn is here, she doesn't even mention. Because for her, it's so obvious that she doesn't even notice. Between noticing and mentioning, there is a huge space. So you only mention, even when you want the other person to picture what you're seeing, you only mention what you realize is important for the other person to understand. What is obvious is normally taken for granted. So that is why exercising, going to the place of the other person is so important. Because from that place, if our friends here, if they do like this, they will be much more able, it's much more likely that they will be able to say what the other one needs to understand what he or she is seeing. And that is communication. So we have about 10 minutes. This is our last slide. And I would really love to at least listen to your voice. I think Hussein opened his camera because he wants to say something. Am I right? Or not?
No.
No, I'm wrong. Okay. I was just trying. So coming back to your reality at the table, maybe, I don't know, but maybe you will have just you and the other negotiator at the table. Maybe it will be a more complex situation where you have you and your lawyer, the other party, and the other party's lawyer. In any circumstance, you can do the exercise depending. I don't know if do you know beforehand what is the role that you will play, or you know at the moment? Ruslan? You know at the moment?
They know in advance. They know little in advance.
Okay.
I think someone from ELSA may provide more details, but usually they receive the case well in advance, and then they know their roles.
Okay. So if you know in advance, even better, because you can make this exercise in a more concrete way. So you can think about not only you and the other, but about you and anybody else. So a lawyer is about as good as the other lawyer is. It's the same example as the two friends camping. So a lawyer doesn't need to be the best and run faster than the judge. He only needs to run faster than the other lawyer. It's exactly the same situation. And the lawyer needs to be, of course, he will talk to the other lawyer. I don't know in Azerbaijan, but in Brazil, at least, it's not ethical for the lawyer to talk directly to the other lawyer's client. So they can only talk indirectly. So they will talk to their peer lawyer. But of course, while doing that, you're trying to influence the other part. The decision makers are the negotiators. The lawyers are assistants to the negotiators. So although he's talking lawyer to lawyer or negotiator to negotiator, they're all the time relating to everybody involved, to everybody at the table. So you need to exercise this feeling at each other's place to everybody. A lawyer can influence a lot the client to be more collaborative or more adversarial. The hardest negotiation is when you want to collaborate and you talk to someone who's not even listening to you. That happens a lot. So if the person is not listening to you, what is she listening to? That is the question. Is she listening to her fear? Is she listening to a script that was ready before the competition, so it's very static, so you need to play with it? If you know that the other party is very frozen in an ideal dialogue, that will not happen. It is the perfect situation to just play with it. But in order to be able to play, you need to be in your center. So you need to be prepared to any kind of game. You don't know what the game is. You're discovering the game. So you need to be able to ask the right questions so that the game comes up to surface. And then you start playing with it. So if the other party is not able to interact in your game, in your chosen game, how do you change the game that they are playing? How do you make them come to your comfort zone and not them? Who will drag who to the comfort zone will depend on understanding deeper and deeper what is going on within yourself and within the other party and the other lawyer and your own lawyer. Many times your lawyer is not your friend. Many times your lawyer has their own agenda. It is very common. I'm not saying that this will happen, but it is very common for lawyers to have a different objective in relation to the client's objective. So how do you prepare that beforehand? Negotiating with your lawyer in a way that will help him or she be working on the same direction that you want to go needs to be a preparation, needs preparation. It's not at the table that you will change the game between you and your lawyer. Between you and your lawyer at the table, you need to be one. You need to act like one. You need to be in harmony. Otherwise, you will destroy your team. So, this is what I prepared for you today. I have one more. This is the image of a poorly solved conflict or a poorly prepared negotiation. Thinking that all these men are at the same table, they are in the same team. If they're not able to see each other and to work as a team, this is what happens. So this is why it is so important to take everyone into account, because the sea is not friendly for small boats. We need to be at the same boat. All right. So
Thank you very much, Gabriela. Thank you very much. I like the presentation a lot. I'm definitely going to use some of the ideas I got in this presentation with reference to you, of course. And if I may use some pictures or something like that, I'll discuss it with, later with you, because I like them a lot. And
the pictures are not mine. I found them on the
Okay.
internet. Okay.
Okay.
Only the feet are mine.
It is very helpful. And just to mention one thing about the last slide you had about the boat and the parties trying to get their own small boats. I like that picture. I don't know if you have heard about that like scholar or not, Elinor Ostrom. She's the only one of only two Nobel Prize winners in economy, and she wrote a lot about how collaboration will increase the economic, social, and all those developments. And it's very, she has nothing to do with mediation, but she talks about how collaboration in society affect the economy of the country. How people, those collaboration trust between the people help overall development. It's very interesting. She has very empirical studies about the development as a result of collaboration. So the last slide is very like kind of demonstration of that, let's say, idea that collaboration is very important. Thank you very much. So
You're
if the
welcome.
students have any questions, students have been kind of passive today, but I don't know, maybe it's the end of the day or something like that. If you have any questions, please just go ahead.
And if you're shy to speak English, you can speak whatever you want, and
I'll translate that. Yes, I can translate that if you are shy to speak in English. Yani Azerbaycan İngiliz dilində danışmağa biraz çətinlik çəkirsinizsə, Azərbaycanca da danışa bilərsiniz, mən tərcümə edə bilərəm.
So I'm teaching a training, mediation training in English, but for Brazilians. So some law schools in Brazil are offering that, especially for people who want to travel abroad, to study abroad and so on. And that happens a lot. People are shy to ask in English. So, but of course they speak the same language I do, so it's easier. So at the end, we always do an epilogue in Portuguese. Well, all right. If I can be of any use, let me know. It will be a pleasure. Okay, and I'll send you the PowerPoint open.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you very
You're
much,
welcome.
Gabriela.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very, very good luck. And I'll be there with you mentally. Okay?
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much, Gabriela.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.